Raymond Batiste, also known as Rabies, of Tempe St. George, who resided in Canada, passed away on Monday, August 22, 2022, at the age of 72. He was the husband of Joycelyn Batiste, father of Rima in Canada, grandfather of Brielle, brother of Maureen and Desmond in Grenada, Lincoln and Michael in the USA, and Joseph Batiste, uncle of Rochelle, Kelvin, Teddy, Joel, Ramon, Jaime, and Joselle, brother-in-law of Elsa and Sherma in Grenada, Roland in Trinidad, Rosalind, Velma, Irma, Esther and Joan in the USA, and Errol in Canada. Many cousins, other relatives and close friends in the USA, the UK, Canada and Grenada, including the Batiste, Edwards, Clouden, Thomas, Boca, Morgan and McBurney families, Charles Lake and family, Cecil Charles, also known as Peggy, Perrin Johnson and family, Miss Cynthia Alexander, Rosalind Batiste, Crawford Best, Elijah and Anthea Japal, Basil Noel, Raymond Redhead, Maureen Cuffey and the members of the all-black football and cricket teams, and friends and neighbors of Tempe and surrounding areas. The funeral service for the late Raymond Batiste, also known as Rabies, of Tempe St. George, who resided in Canada, will take place on Saturday, September 10th in Canada, followed by private cremation. Ashes would be laid to rest in Grenada on a date to be announced. Arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Vincent Anderson Cayenne, also known as Sadis and Sam, of Mount Pleasant, Carriacou, passed away on Tuesday, 16th August 2022, at the age of 65. He was the son of Elizabeth Cayenne, also known as Sister V, companion friend Fran of Grand Bay, Carriacou, father of Alicia, Allison, and Desiree, brother of Gemma Claudette Caesar, Melba Cayenne Douglas, Audrey Roberts, Myrtle Roberts Aldridge, Deborah and Fitzroy Cayenne, all in the U.S., Caroline, Andrew, and Simon Vincent in the United Kingdom, and Patrick in Trinidad, nephew of Doreen McIntosh, Sylvia and Easton Cayenne in the U.S., Inga Charles in Grenada, and Charles and Samuel Stanislaus in Carriacou, brother of William, Othniel, Andrew, Sheila, Mary, and Uri, brother-in-law of Bishop Samuel Caesar, Larry Douglas, Jadu and Twine, and David Aldridge, all in the USA. Uncle of 25, godson of Mrs. Alma Phibbs, close cousin of Cynthia Stanislaus and Germaine Cayenne Bishop. Many other relatives and close friends, including the Cayenne and Stanislaus families, and neighbors of Mount Pleasant and Grand Bay and surrounding areas, too numerous to mention. The funeral of the late Vincent Anderson Cayenne, also known as Sadis and Sam, of Mount Pleasant, Carriacou, will take place on Monday, September 12th at 1 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Lacroix Brothers Funeral Chapel, Lauriston, Carriacou, according to Glad Tidings Pentecostal Assembly rites, and interment will be at the Grand Bay Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Joel Hazard, also known as Rastaman and Iwell, of Lauraland, St. David, passed away on Monday, 25th July 2022, at the age of 42. He was the son of Lynette Hazard, father of Kevin Isaac and Omega Gibson, several brothers and sisters including Peter Hazard, Elron Nelson, Vicky, Raquel and Rhea Hazard, and Irma, uncle of 7, nephew of many including Marcia, Judith, Andrew and John Hazard, Pamela and Jude MacDonald, close friend of Michelle Isaac. Many cousins, other relatives and close friends including Rochelle Gibson, cousins Nakisha, Akisha and Kenisha, Denise Lewis, Nigel and Twine in Tortola, Leon and Twine, Devon Worm, and friends and neighbors of Lauraland, Windsor Forest and surrounding areas. The funeral of the late Joel Hazard, also known as Rastaman and Iwell, of Lauraland, St. David, will take place on Tuesday, September 13th at 1 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the St. Dominic's RC Church, Pedmotar, and interment will be at the Windsor Forest Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Sterling Stephen of Vendham St. George passed away on Friday, August 5th, 2022, at the age of 48. He was the son of Adonis Stephen, father of Shalisha Fletcher Hines, grandfather of Allegra Hines, brother of Jennifer Stephen, Yolan Stephen Reed, Patsy Adolphus, Agnes, Marva, Helen, Sherry-Ann, and Bernard Alexander, nephew of Gloria Thomas and Peter Stephen, father-in-law of Ellie Hines, uncle of Krista and Rhea Stephen, Giselle, Jason and Jensen Dominic, Alex Reed, Clint, Alex, and Anson. Many cousins, other relatives and close friends, including the Stephen family of Vendham, Beaulieu, Happy Hill, Concord, and Marigot, the Daniel, Bartholomew, Alexander, and Joseph families of Vendham and Willis, Doreen, Celia, Gladys, Gomez, Mark, Anik, Sherman, Fitzroy, and Derek, and friends and neighbours of Vendham and surrounding areas. The funeral of the late Sterling Stephen of Vendham St. George will take place on Tuesday, 13th September at 1 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Vendham Roman Catholic Church, and interment will be at the Vendham Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home.
Victor Festus Lawrence Stroud, also known as Bob Heads and Uncle Vic of Laborie St. George, a well-known taxi driver, passed away on Friday, 12th August at the age of 77. He was the son of Imelda Rosie Bowen Jarvis, father of Simone Lorraine Smith, Kellon Stroud, Clinton Stroud, also known as DJ Explosion, in Grenada, Roxanne Sylvester Henry, Kimoy Stroud, and Garfield Stroud in the USA. Grandfather of Sorana, Soraya, Donnell, Delon, Kyle, Ethon, and Dion. Great-grandfather of Liam. Father of Evangelist Lloyd E. Lawrence Charter Sr., Matthew Lawrence, Keith R. Lawrence Charter, Joan Lawrence, Arnold, Beverly Lawrence in the UK. Father-in-law of Jason Henry in the USA. Uncle of Lloyd E. Charter Jr., Travis L. Charter, Stephanie, Carmen, Sandra, Monique, Samantha, and Colette Stroud. Brother-in-law of Mary E. Charter, Gloria Calder, Elliot, Angus, Joyce, Joycelyn, Hermione, Denise, Carol, Brensley, and Godfrey. Many cousins, other relatives, and close friends, including Tanya in the USA, Kenneth Bernard, Steve Hall, and the Stroud, Peterkin, Lawrence, and Worm families, Deborah Park, Susan Worm, the Harris and Sandyford families of Laborie, Barman, Peter, Paul, members of the Taxi Association, friends and neighbors of Laborie and the surrounding areas. The funeral of the late Victor Festus Lawrence Stroud of Laborie St. George will take place on Tuesday, 13th September at 1 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Garden of Remembrance Funeral Chapel, Cemetery Hill, St. George, and interment will be at the Monjaloo Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Gordon Roll Joseph, also known as Banks of Tivoli St. Andrew, died on Sunday, 28th August at the age of 54. Left to mourn his siblings Maureen, Laureen, Chloril, Nally, Justina, Kenneth in Canada, Cynthia, and Desianne in the USA. Many nieces and nephews, including Tanisha, Alicia, Akram, Travon, Chandel, Ivory, Ziggy, Lyndon, Twain, Alana, Travis, Kareen, and Heroy in the UK. Brother-in-law of Alt Allison, Chiney, and others, close friends of Kenesha, Laurel, Roland, and The Boys on the Block by Terry Shop, where he was an employee. Other relatives and friends including the family of Uncle Dale and Auntie Jutha, Anne McSween and family, Sharon and family, the McSween family of La Portrie and River Sally, the Joseph family of Tivoli and Hermitage, and the Thomas family of Mount Rose, neighbors, friends, and relatives of Tivoli, Hermitage, St. John, River Sally, and the surrounding areas. The funeral service for the late Gordon Roll Joseph, also known as Banks of Tivoli St. Andrew, will take place on Tuesday, 13th September at 2 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the La Portrie SDA Church, interment at the Tivoli Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home.
Charmaine Loris Samuel of La Femme St. David passed away on Thursday, August 25th, 2022, at the age of 40. She was the daughter of Teresa Samuel and Ernest Blackett, granddaughter of Agnes and Guy Moraine, close friend of Andy Batiste, sister of Tonisha and Nisha Samuel, Lynthia, Yolanda, Liber, Carrie and Kendall James, niece of Clara Samuel, Marcia Charles, Joycelyn, Stanley and Sharon Moraine, Lorna Felix, Avis Abond, Jenny and Janice Stewart, aunt of Kayla, Kaylin, Kaylee, Caden and Caleb. Many other relatives and close friends including Jude and Doreen Hector, Ruth Kennedy and family, the Samuel family of Lower La Femme, Beaton and Lauraland, the Blackett family of Beaton, Ingrid and family, the Batiste family of Mardi Gras, Christina Alexis and family, Brenda Samuel and family, the 1999 graduating class of the Happy Hill Secondary School, and friends and neighbours of La Femme and surrounding areas. The funeral of the late Charmaine Loris Samuel of La Femme St. David will take place on Wednesday, September 14th at 1 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Garden of Prayer, St. Paul's, and interment will be at the Mount Airy Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Franklin Vincent Fortune, also known as I-Boy, of Brunswick Carriacou, former employee of Cable and Wireless, passed away on Saturday, 3rd September 2022 at the age of 55. He was the son of Anne Fortune, father of Frankie Joseph, Andy, Anisha, Andel, Anthony and Andrea Fortune, and Wazim Coy, grandfather of Caden and Kaylin Joseph, Tahara McLawrence Joseph, Katie Charles, and Ariana McSween, brother of Richard and Francis Gabriel, Patrick Mathurin, Lincoln Fortune Simon, Edith Fortune Clark, Judith Fortune Matthews, Sharon Fortune Joseph, Joseph and Jeffrey Fortune, and Don Michael Ashby, brother-in-law of Stena and Theodora Gabriel, Phyllis Mathurin, Neil Clark, and Ivan Matthews, uncle of many, nephew of many. Many other relatives and close friends, including the Fortune and Simon families, and neighbours of Brunswick, Six Roads, and surrounding areas, too numerous to mention. The funeral of the late Franklin Vincent Fortune, also known as I-Boy of Brunswick Carriacou, will take place on Wednesday, September 14th at 1 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Christ the King Anglican Church, Church Street, Hillsborough, Carriacou, and interment will be at the Brunswick Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home.
Audrey Marina Dufont, née Clarence, also known as Tandri of Boca, who resided at Melrose, St. George, a well-known market vendor, passed away on Tuesday, 16th August, at the age of 79. Left to mourn her daughters Arlene Clarence, Anne Dufont, Laurel Dufont Bartholomew, her sons Joseph, Anthony, and Cullen Dufont, all in Grenada. Grandchildren Cameron, Renzi, and Darrell Dufont, Neil Pierre, Christopher Charles, and Laurisha Bartholomew. Brothers Augustine Clarence in Grenada, Finbar and Victor Clarence in Trinidad. Sisters Cynthia John in Trinidad, Monica Clarence in the USA. Sisters-in-law Teresa Dufont in Trinidad, Merle Douglas in Grenada. Nieces including Patricia Clarence McBurney in Trinidad, Susan Burnett, Cindy and Sherry Clarence, Shakira Penny in Grenada, Abigail Redhead in the USA. Nephews including Michael Jefferson, Jerron Nico, Aaron and Bradley Clarence, and Jason Clarence in the USA. Dawn Thomas in Grenada. Many relatives and friends including Mrs. Teresa Ross and family in Canada, Miss Jeanette Charles and family in the USA and Grenada, Mrs. Sylvia Mitchell and family, Mrs. Carmen Lawrence and family, Mr. Gordon McBurney, the Clarence, Dufont, James, Ross, and Penny families, Edna John and family in England, Miss Hanny Alexis and family, Mr. Filbert Charles and family, Mrs. Sylvia Boca and family, Mrs. Bernadette John and family, Mrs. Veronica Batiste and family, Nella Jones and family, Lisa Stanisclaus and family, Miss Erica Coppin and family, Sean and Godfrey Dufont and family, Bernadette Guy and family, Miss Doreen Smith and family, Yvonne Redhead and family, Kellon Mitchell, the market vendors, Dr. Eswald Marshall and Dr. Belfon, Father Sean Doggett, and parishioners of Our Lady Help of Christians, Bolio, Father Gabriel, friends and neighbors from the northeast and throughout Grenada. The funeral service for the late Audrey Marina Dufont née Clarence, also known as Tandria of Boca, who resided at Melrose, St. George, will take place on Wednesday, 14th September at 1 p.m. Funeral service will be held at Our Lady Help of Christians, Bolio. Entombment will be at the family cemetery in Melrose. Funeral arrangements have been entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home.
Lester Bernard John Simon, also known as Branch and Nooksy, of Montgranby St. John, passed away on Saturday, 13th August 2022, at the age of 54. He was the father of Dylan Bartholomew, also known as Monkey, brother of Francis and Claire Simon, Anastasia Mitchell, Jennifer Cador, and Junior Williams, nephew of Ruth Joseph, Miriam Nimrod, Velly, Debbie and Val Branch, Cecilia Peterson, Matilda Williams, Melvin Houston, Sakima, Brime, Alan Campbell, Kester and Roger Branch, uncle of Naomi Mitchell, Waynisha, Marvin and Marcus Simon, Moses and Josiah. Many cousins, other relatives and close friends including Wayne James, Jem and Mel Monroe, Anne Clark, David Simon, the James family, George Butler and family, the Charles family, Daniel Lewis and family, the Redhead family of Guove, the Peters, Lacroix and Antoine families, Godwin and family, and friends and neighbours of Montgranby, Douglaston, Guove and surrounding areas. The funeral of the late Lester Bernard John Simon, also known as Branch and Nooksy, of Montgranby St. John, will take place on Thursday, 15th September at 1 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the St. Peter's Catholic Church, Guove, and interment will be at the Douglaston Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Mary Joyce St. John, also known as Joyce Campbell, and Mammy Joyce of St. David Street, Victoria, St. Mark, passed away on Saturday, 27th September 2022, at the age of 93. She was the mother of Pat Fletcher, Wendell Campbell, Shelley Coburn, Cheryl and Terry Campbell, grandmother of 17, great-grandmother of 16, sister of Myrna Fletcher in London, mother-in-law of Joyce Fletcher, Sandra and Melissa Campbell, and Burnett Coburn. Many other relatives and friends including Merle Ferguson and family, Marva and family, Itea Massai and family, Olive Farrier and family, Helen Marshall and family, the Sylvester family, the Telfer family, Sister Jill Jerome and family, Karen Fraser, Kiwami Ketu, Cassie and Rodney Julian, Chad and family, and friends and neighbours of St. David Street and surrounding areas. The funeral service for the late Mary Joyce St. John, also known as Joyce Campbell, and Mammy Joyce of St. David Street, Victoria, St. Mark, will take place on Thursday, September 15th at 1 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Seventh-day Adventist Church, Queen Street, Victoria, St. Mark, and interment will be at the Coast Guard Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home.
Agnes Pearney Noel, also known as Tanty Aggie and Grandma of Tempe St. George, passed away on Friday, 26th August at the age of 85. Left to mourn her children, Ernest Noel in the USA, Kellon Noel and Keisha Noel Charles in Grenada. Adopted children, Neville John, Louina George, and Troy Felix and Kim Lawrence. Daughters-in-law, Hazel Ann Noel and Sandra Allen Noel in the USA. Son-in-law, Sergeant Dennis Charles, attached to CID. Brother, Andrew Noel in the USA. Sister-in-law, Mildred Depredine in the UK. Grandchildren, Ernasha, Anika, Anisha, Ernest Jr., and Sydney Joey in the USA. Kelowna, Abil Charles, Rhea, and Adele Pierre in Grenada. Great-grandchildren, Nixon and Nicole Braveboy, Nyla and DJ in the USA, Jelona Green, Camilla, and Kale McMeo in Grenada, goddaughters Maureen Thomas and Sandra Purcell, nieces and nephews Otis Cummins, Marina Joseph, Dennis Noel in the USA, Joanne Samuel in Trinidad, Eric and David Depredine, Louisa Chase Lewis, and many other nieces and nephews in the USA and the UK. Close friends of Elaine Gaskin, Adina John, Elutha Frank, Anne Buckmeyer, Patrice John, Vera St. John, Janice Griffith, Paul, Sandra Lynch, Britis Paul, Marita Johnson in the USA, and Nicholas Boney in Canada. Cousins and other relatives, Claudia Noel and Sally and Augustine in the US, the Noel family of St. Paul's, the Augustine family of Springs, the Bartholomew and Fraser families of Latant, the Gaskin family, the Pear family of Bolio, Bellevue and Tempe, the Halen, John, MacDonald, Andrew and Vivek families of Tempe, the families of Carol Jerome, Carl Victor and Sharon Dominique, the management and staff of Saul EC Limited, and the residents of Marast Hill and the surrounding areas. Caregivers Teresa Mendez, Samura Sylvester, Shade Frank, and the members of the St. George's North Glencase Caregivers Program. The funeral for the late Agnes Noel of Marast Hill, Tempe, St. George will take place on Thursday, 15th September at 1 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception, St. George, and interment to be at the Bottom Cemetery. Funeral arrangements have been entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Francis James Bruno of Grand Anse, St. George passed away on Tuesday, 6th September at the age of 95. The funeral service for the late Francis James Bruno of Grand Anse, St. George will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacroix Brothers Funeral Home.
Raquel Bayama Etienne, née Bartholomew of Molyneux, St. George, passed away on Wednesday, September 7th, 2022, at the age of 41. The funeral arrangements for the late Raquel Bayama Etienne, née Bartholomew of Molyneux, St. George, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Sybil Charles of the Villa Victoria St. Mark passed away on Friday, September 2nd, 2022, at the age of 86. The funeral arrangements for the late Sybil Charles of the Villa Victoria St. Mark will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacroix Brothers Funeral Home. Glenn Griffith Jones of Dudmar, who resided at Syracuse St. David, passed away on Thursday, September 1st, 2022, at the age of 54. The funeral arrangements for the late Glenn Griffith Jones of Dudmar, who resided at Syracuse St. David, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacroix Brothers Funeral Home.
The management and staff of MTV extend deepest condolences to those of you whose loved ones have passed on. Thank you for watching.
The Bible, this book, familiar to every person on the face of the earth today, gives us directions for our life. When death comes, there is great sorrow to the family and friends and loved ones of the one that has passed on. But if we put our trust in the Lord Jesus Christ and we follow the instructions of this book, we know we will meet again. We don't take it lightly. We don't take it for granted. There must be a decision, because without a decision, the decision is made to be separated from God. So put your trust in the Lord. Believe. The thief on the cross said, Lord, consider me. And Jesus said, today you would be with me, this very hour. And they died together. So put your trust in the Lord, and God bless you during your time of grief and bereavement. Put your trust in the Lord.